This is a video about a Beall wood threader kit that I just picked up. Got a project in the future that I want to do some wood threads on, and I wanted to buy one of these, and I was going to buy just a one size thread thing, but Hartville Tool had like a special, and the three different thread size kit came out to be just a little bit more than buying one, so I ordered this, and it came in a couple days from Hartville Tool, and they had like extra 10% off coupons and stuff, so it really didn't cost all that much. And it came with a threader, and it actually came with 3 taps, and there you can see they're from China like everything else is these days, looks like, and came with a router bit and all the hardware that you need and wrench and stuff. And then you have the 3 different size machine blocks. It looked like Delrin. They really nicely machined and stuff, so it looks like it's gonna be a fun kit to have and use. And I had thought about getting some of the tap and die type ones, but this I've heard is does a little better job than them. So there's basically what comes in the kit. You get the mounting block, and there's 3 of those Delrin guides, 3 taps. They give you a lineup guide and extra screws, and then you get a paper with some ideas for handles to build. Now I decided I was going to build 3 different spinning handles there, and 3 different tap handles while I was at it, because they were just small pieces of wood, and instead of trying to build one big one that works for everything, I just figured I'd do that. And then you just need a 7/8 bit, a 5/8 bit, and a 3/8 bit to drill the pilot holes for the taps. And I had some of these old nut templates laying around, but they're really a little bit too small. So I'm just going to put it together here and set it up for the 1-inch size. There's the block for threading. It actually mounts on the bottom of that aluminum plate. They give you 2 screws to mount that up from the bottom there, and everything lines up good and stuff. And if you look back on that board in the background, you can see they actually throw in a bunch of extra screws just in case you lose one, which really is a nice thing, for a company to do, because you're always dropping, when you take things apart, you always lose a screw, and then you spend an hour looking for a new one. So this goes together real nice and easy. And there are some bigger guides you can get too, and bigger taps, but I figured the 1/2, 3/4, and 1-inch size would be good to start with. Then there's that maple block it mounts on, and that actually has a steel threaded insert put in the wood, so that you can just screw these little flathead screws in to hold it all together. So there's one on each end that just, and all that really is just kind of a block to clamp it in to hold it upright, and the aluminum plate there is just for basically mounting the router and aligning it to the little guide there. So it goes together real easy. There's not much that can go wrong, and I've got some old 1-inch dowel I'm going to play with. It's not good. I should use maple like they say, but we'll get into that later. And I've got a little old Harbor Freight trim router. I'm going to pick up another one. I think I've pretty much beat this one up, and the bearings got a little bit of play in them from a couple of years of use. So but I'm just going to use it for today to just try to set it up and cut my first couple of threads with it, just to show you how this unit works. So you really have to crank it in, and it's a solid carbide cutter bit. That's probably worth 1/4 of the price of the set alone right there. It's a real nice cutter. The Harbor Freight router is not the best to use for this application, because it doesn't have a real fine up and down adjustment. But, for now, I'm just going to set it up using this. And, it comes with a couple carriage bolts and some clamps that basically I think it'll accept any size router from, these little trim routers right on up to probably like up to a big 3 horsepower router if you wanted to go that far. So, it's pretty easy to get the screws in. There's nice clearance for everything, and the clamps and everything seem to work pretty nice. So just kind of line it up, and then there's a bushing that fits down in the that white guide there. So you drop that in, and then you just go back and take the router and go carefully so you don't hit the bit or anything, but you just move the router around until you can actually drop that bit right down in the center of the guide. And then I just clamp it so that I know I'm, fairly centered in the that up-down mechanism there, and then go back and just tighten the router base down to that base plate there. They tell you to take a pair of flat nose or a pair of long nose pliers and just tighten those, give a little extra twist on them so that nothing will move around later. And then there you can see what I mean by not having a real good up and down adjustment, but you just take that bushing out now, and everything's supposedly all lined up and pretty much ready to start machining. It's a pretty easy setup. You just set it back in there now, and you have to set the actual depth. Now, I'm going to warn you that it did take me a couple tries to get the depth right, because I really didn't know what I was doing to start out with. So I just kind of set it so that the router bit stuck in there, and it was a little too far down on this one, but it was, I figured I'd get a starting point to get a good idea in the future. And then I turned on the router and just, fed the dowel in. And once the bit starts cutting, it actually goes right into a threaded section of that bushing, and it really pulls it in nice, and it cuts it nice, but I could feel it kind of hanging up a little bit and stuff, and I knew there was something wrong with the depth of cut. So I just ran this first one, and I pulled it out, and you can look at it and see it was like way, way too deep. It just hacked everything up there. So, that was kind of my starting point. So I went back and I actually moved the router up just a hair, and just went back and, did another test run on it just to kind of see where I stood this time. And the threads actually started to look a little bit better, but they still were a little bit too deep. So this is the third setup. I backed it up a little bit more, and just decided to take and run a piece through here. And this one actually did look good. They say you should use like a hard maple dowel or something that's a real good dowel. These are real crummy, that white wood dowels that are old, and they're not really sized right or anything, so this isn't the perfect test of the jig, but I was able to get some decent threads on it anyway. If you look there, and using good dowels, I'll be able to get them perfect, I think. But really nice thread, and looks like it's going to work good. So that's the first good one that I got after 3 tries, and now you could cut threads all day and it would never change. So then I just took a little block of maple, and I wanted to see how the taps worked, and just tap a piece to check my thread. They do tell you should put a little bit of like wax on the beeswax or something on the tap there, and I didn't do that. I just ran it dry here, so it was a little bit tough going in there on this one, but it did do a nice job on cutting the thread. The Beall does make a nice countersink that I'm going to order too, I think. They make a 87 degree countersink that you get a real nice countersink on the start of these. So there it is, the my first threaded piece that I ran through, and there's just running the thread through a piece of maple, and that actually can be cut to a nut shape later, but for now I just used the block. Until I get into a project, I just wanted to see how it would work. Then I went back and started working on my little crank handles, and got to drill some cross holes in them first for the little carriage bolts and wing nuts that go across to clamp the things. And then I had to drill like a relief at the end of the slot for where the clamp actually squeezes on the piece that it's feeding. And then I had 3 different size holes in them. Everything's the same in the 3 different ones that I made, except for the size of the dowel it's going to clamp on. So I have this 1-inch one, a 3/4 of an inch one, and a 1/2 inch one to match the 3 sizes that I'll be doing. And over to that little Harbor Freight jigsaw, and it's fun to use every once in a while to cut some radiuses and stuff. So I just marked out some radiuses on the end of them and rough cut them, and Then I just made a little jig for the sander here to allow me to just go back and clean them up nice, so they, came out to be a perfect radius. So just like one pass around with the dowel located in the hole there, and that's pretty much done. Then I had to cut some slots to allow the clamp to squeeze, and I just used a little 1/8" router bit in my router table, and a couple push sticks there to do it. And I have to admit, I did break one bit. You'll see one of these has a nick in it where the bit broke. I tried feeding it too fast, but you just have to make about 4 passes on there, and you finally get a slot all the way through. And I just went back and took a little push block there, and just cut those 2 long tapered sides on the bandsaw, so I could just a rough cut on them. And then as always, I just go back to the disc sander here, and I think it's about one of the most used pieces of equipment in my shop, this little 12-inch disc sander and that little 1-inch Harbor Freight belt sander. I use them all the time for doing stuff like this, and just kind of deburring and radiusing off and breaking corners and stuff. They do a good job. I just ran both sides on there, and then just went around the corners and the edges, and got all the radiuses on those blocks. Yeah, it'd be real easy to do it as one block like they said, though. But once you're set up to make something like this once, it's it may take you an hour to make one of them. It may take you an hour and 5 minutes to make 3 of them. So there's really not much difference in time. I was going to do them on the CNC router, but I figured I'd do some stuff, like this, just to give some people other ideas. So I got them, got them all done, and just went back and the front of that little fan that I've got with a filter on it. Went back and sanded them, and got them all cleaned up there pretty good. So they were basically done. They just needed to have a. I just took a quick coat of clear spray and just put on them just to protect them. There you see that notch in the one where the bit broke, and that's what they look like with the there's some handles going in there now. I had some old stainless stock in my garage. I went out and cut 3 pieces and just took some sandpaper to the end there. You can see it's kind of roughed up where I'm gonna glue it into the block, and then I'll just I got some of that super glue, the gel type glue that'll fill little gaps and stuff, and I'm just gonna put a drop of that on there, and then just slide that right into the hole that I drilled. That stuff usually sticks pretty good. I've never had a problem with it as long as you rough up the surface on the stainless. And then I just put the other 2 together like that, and then I had to start working on the tap handles, and there it is, the Infinity Dado sets in the saw now, and I made a little setup there to set up and cut the angles to hold the taps to clamp on them. So once you get set up and put a stop block, it's a real quick thing to cut the grooves. And actually, I cut 2 different depths. I did a shallower one for the 1/2-inch tap, and then I cut deeper V grooves there for the bigger taps, figuring I'd get a little more surface area and have less chance of tearing it out later. It was real nice that they gave you that little page of ideas in the kit too, so you had a good starting point for something like this, and there it is. That's how they're gonna clamp in there. So it should work pretty good, I think. So I got them all the notches cut on them, and then you gotta round the corners on them so you can pull on them, without getting hurt. And kind of looks like my finger's near the bit, but it actually isn't. I've got the that stop block down there to start them all in the same position, and then I just rock it in against the table there, and I'm actually several inches from the bit, but at this angle it looks close, but it really isn't. A couple seconds later, there's what they look like now. Already to just have a couple little radiuses put on them, and be sanded and cleaned up. So back over to this little disc sander, and it's nice to have one of these disc cleaning little doodads, like a big gum eraser almost, and it does take the sawdust out of the sanding disc, and you can actually get probably 3 times the life out of a disc just by cleaning it with that and not letting anything get burned into it and stuff. So it's a good item to have. And then over that little Harbor Freight sander, just gonna break the corners on there just so there's no sharp edges, and that's a really easy job to do, and that's a little bit more controllable when you're working on something, on an angle like that and stuff, and you want to turn it that disc can take a lot off if you're not careful, where this is, a little more forgiving. So there it is. That's what they're going to look like. There's a 1/2-inch one there, kind of put together and just ready to, just get a quick clear, a little sanding first and then a quick clear coat. Here we go back, hit that little orbital sander, and I can say that making one of those little dust filters is really a good idea, and I did ask someone a while back, or someone did ask me a while back to, do a video about making one, and I may do that. I'm probably going to make another one in the future, and I'll make a video. So then after the super glue dried on that, those pieces of metal in the cranks here, I had some old, those wood plugs that I was, decided to use to plug the tubing on the one side. So same thing, a little bit of super glue, and just going to stick it in the end there. I kind of hate bugs, and if I leave stuff hollow like that, you never know when you're going to find a spider or something crawl out of it and bite you. So I put that plug in that end and little rubber cap on it, and there it is, all done. Pretty simple job, didn't take long. I go to Tractor Supply though and buy my hardware. You get a whole bag like that for about $1.25, and anywhere else it would cost you 3 times that much. So you just buy it in bulk and they weigh it out, and it makes it a lot cheaper. And here's what they look like, all ready to go, the 3 different sizes, so I don't have to mess around and change anything around, and I can just pick up the one that I want to use. And it was a really nice drawing that they gave you for these. This does really work out nice. It saves you a lot of money instead of going out and buying a big machine tap handle that'll, hold a very large tap like that. So, in the end, they did work out good. And, there you can see I'm just clamped it on that one that I cut. But it really does make it easy to, crank it in and out of the machine. And while I was at it, I figured I'd just make like a go no go setup gauge. There you can see I put some of the screw lube wax on the taps this time, and actually they cut the maple like butter and did a they were much easier to turn, and they did a nicer job with a little bit of wax on them. But I decided to make a setup gauge for the tool, and I just decided to take a piece of maple and tap the three different sizes that are in the kit in it, so I could just while I'm setting it up, I could just use that to try and screw the test piece in until I get the router at the correct depth of cut to get a proper thread. So I'll be able to tell if I get a loose thread or a tight thread, and adjust it accordingly. So it didn't take long to just take a little piece of maple and drill 3 holes in it, and just cut around on each end, and now I'm just tapping it through here, and I'll pretty much just have a simple gauge I can keep with it, and I don't have to worry about making one every time. And those tap handles really worked out nice. They were perfect, nice feel, and they did do a good job on the little instruction sheet. So so here you see it's just all 3 of the taps. I was surprised. They really did do a really nice, clean job and stuff. I was kind of wondering, in wood, what they would look like, but you can see that I can't really see. I didn't get a good job, but you can see that I do have to get the bigger countersink to get a good countersink on these to, make them look real nice where they start in there. So there's my gauge. I just gave it a quick squirt of spray and wrote on it which ones they were, and there's just that test piece that I made a while back to play with, and that way I can just cut the threads, try screwing it in, and I'll know that it's right or wrong. I felt that was just a good little item to make. And then I just went back to try the handles on the router, and I tried first. I tried just kind of trying to support the dowel as it went in, and crank it and stuff. And the dowels are a little bit undersized and they rock around in there, so I figured if I just kind of pushed it down a little bit, it might help or might not. But it really didn't make a difference. The threads pretty much came out the same no matter what you did. So there you see they're not bad. There's a couple of little tiny nicks in them and stuff, but it's the wrong kind of wood. It really has to be a nice hardwood dowel that's sized properly to get a good cut, I think. So I'll be doing more videos later using this in projects, so we'll get to really see how good it is, and hopefully I'll get my CNC lathe done so I can just make my dowels quickly, make the nuts up actually, or the bolts and nuts up pretty quickly. So, I mean, you can see how those handles really do make it nice, and I found that if you go a little bit slower, you do get a little bit less tear out. And the other thing, I was shutting the router off and trying to back it out before, and I found out that actually it does clean it up a little bit better if you just back it out slowly with the router still running. So, this was kind of the last one that I played around and did for now, but you can pretty much see that it's a real easy way to make threads once you're set up. I mean, you could run hundreds of these once you're set up and stuff, and they come out identical, one right after the next. So I'm real happy with this kit so far. There's the thread I just cut, and then there's that gauge that I made, and I mean, you can see that it's really a perfect fit. There's no shake. It screws in there nice tight fit and everything. And, it's going to be a real fun thing to have around the shop. I just thought I'd share this, in case anybody wants to know just, how these kits do work and how you make threads with them and stuff. And I'm a little behind with my projects in my shop now, too. But, here's I did have an empty drawer. These were those cabinets with the drawers that I showed you in that tour workout, good, because I had an empty drawer and everything actually fit together in one drawer nice here, so it's all together and stuff. But like I was saying, I'm a little bit behind because I've been messing with other things I didn't plan on messing with. So hopefully soon I'll get into some other projects that are a little bit bigger, and some build projects and stuff like that. So, in the end, it really looks like it's going to be a nice, easy way to make some wooden nuts and bolts to, be able to make some kids' toys and some other projects with. And they give you everything that you need in the kit. They even give you extra hardware, and they give you plans and instructions. And, everything seems to work good so far. So, I think they did a real nice job on this kit. And, they've been making them for years. So, I guess they've got it really down right now. So, the good thing about these is if you want to add bigger sizes to this kit, you just have to buy that white insert and the new taps, and you can actually do, I think, 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches also. So, it's a really nice expandable thing if you want to go bigger too in the future. So anyhow, thanks for watching. Please subscribe.